Every person who has ever lived had a mother and a father. So if you go back far enough in your family tree, you would expect to find roughly the same number of male and female ancestors. But that's not what scientists found. When researchers began analyzing ancient DNA, a strange pattern appeared. Across large parts of human history, female ancestors dramatically outnumbered male ancestors. In some populations, the ratio was as high as 17 to 1. 17 female ancestors for every one male ancestor. That shouldn't happen. So where did all the men go? The answer takes us into one of the darkest realities of human history, a reality that shaped the DNA of nearly everyone alive today. When most people think of war, they imagine armies, uniforms, borders, treaties, rules. But for most of human history, none of those things existed. Imagine two small tribes living near the same river. Both need water, both need food, both need land. A drought arrives. Games become scarce. The river shrinks. Suddenly, survival itself becomes the reason for conflict. There are no diplomats, no peace negotiations, no international laws, only families trying to stay alive. When violence began, it wasn't political, it was personal. And it often ended with one group disappearing entirely. For decades, archaeologists studied ancient skeletons, searching for evidence of how prehistoric people lived. Instead, many discovered evidence of how they died. Fractured skulls, broken forearms, entire burial sites filled with signs of violent death. Archaeologist Lawrence Keeley spent years analyzing evidence from prehistoric conflicts. His findings challenged the popular belief that ancient humans were mostly peaceful before civilization. The evidence suggested something very different. Violence between groups was common, and when researchers looked closer, they noticed something strange. Adult male skeletons appeared among the dead far more often than expected. Women and children were often missing from those same patterns of battlefield death. At first, nobody knew why. Then genetics began providing answers. DNA records history in ways that archaeology cannot. Bones tell us how someone died. Genes tell us who left descendants. And when scientists examined ancient populations, they found a recurring pattern. After periods of conflict, local male lineages often vanished. Entire Y chromosome lines disappeared from the genetic record, yet maternal lineages survived. The women remained. Their DNA continued into future generations. The men's often did not. This pattern appeared repeatedly across different regions and different periods of history. The implication was difficult to ignore. When groups fought, defeated men frequently died. The women often survived. But survival did not mean life continued as before. Their communities, families, and social worlds had often been destroyed around them. The genetic record was preserving a story that written history never recorded. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Across many documented cases of tribal warfare throughout history, women of reproductive age were often incorporated into the victorious group. From a biological perspective, it increased the winning group's numbers. From a human perspective, it meant people were forced into entirely new lives after losing everything familiar. Languages changed, communities disappeared, families were separated, and yet the women survived. Their descendants survived, their DNA survived. Thousands of years later, scientists can still see the traces of those survival stories inside modern populations. Not because anyone wrote them down, but because genetics preserved the evidence. The fate of children was often different again. Very young children faced the greatest danger. In mobile societies, caring for infants during conflict could be difficult or impossible. Older children had better chances of survival, especially if they could work, learn a new language, or adapt to a new group. Anthropologists studying societies around the world found repeated examples of captured children eventually becoming full members of the communities that absorbed them. Within a generation, many became indistinguishable from everyone else. The family they lost survived only in memory, and sometimes not even that. Then researchers uncovered something even stranger. The pattern had occurred so often throughout history that it left a measurable mark on humanity itself. Studies examining ancient populations found evidence that far fewer men than women contributed descendants to future generations. In some regions, the difference was enormous. A relatively small number of men fathered a disproportionately large share of future populations. Meanwhile, female ancestry remained much more broadly distributed. The result is the astonishing imbalance geneticists observed. Far more female ancestors than male ancestors, not because women lived easier lives, but because history repeatedly selected which lineages survived and which disappeared. When people think about war, they usually think about battles. Generals, weapons, victories, defeats. History tends to focus on the people who fought, but genetics reveals another story. A story about the people who survived after the fighting ended. The mothers who raised children in unfamiliar communities. The daughters who adapted to worlds they never chose. The families who disappeared without leaving written records. Most of them never became famous. Most left behind no monuments, no statues, no chronicles, only descendants. So why do you have more female ancestors than male ancestors? Because for thousands of years, human conflict followed a pattern. Men often died in greater numbers. Entire male lineages disappeared. Women survived more often and carried their ancestry forward into future generations. The result wasn't just a historical trend. It became part of humanity's genetic legacy. Written into your DNA is evidence of countless forgotten lives. Lives shaped by loss, by adaptation, by survival. History remembers the warriors, but genetics remembers everyone. And sometimes it tells a very different story.